Welcome to the Microsoft Tips Showcase, where we provide quick single-topic videos on how to do something within a Microsoft 365 related tool, such as SharePoint, Dynamics, Office, etc. SharePoint lists and libraries allow you to create lookup columns, which will link to information in this same site. In this training session, you will learn how to create a lookup column and how to configure the lookup columns options. These following steps assume you're beginning from within a SharePoint site, a team site, or something similar that contains lists and libraries. I'm going to begin by opening my demo SharePoint site. And then I'm going to click on my list called Metadata Demo here in the Quick Launch on the left-hand side of the screen. Next, I'll open the list settings by going to the gear icon in the top right-hand side of the page. When I click on that, I can find the list settings option and click on it. And I'm in the list settings. One thing to keep in mind is you might be seeing something different. What I showed you was the modern look and feel, but there's a classic version that you might be looking at. So let me go back to the metadata demo list. This is where we were a minute ago, and that's the modern look and feel. Down here on the bottom left-hand side, it says Return to Classic SharePoint. I'm going to click that, and that'll change the look and feel to the classic SharePoint. You might be seeing that, and if you are, to get to list settings, you would go up here to the ribbon or to the tabs and click the list tab to get the list ribbon, come across to the right to the settings command group and choose list settings. And now we're back where we were a minute ago in the list settings. We're going to go ahead and create a column now. So let's scroll down the page below the columns until you see Create Column. That link, when you click on it, will open up the form that we can use to create a new column. So I'm going to use that form to walk us through it. So first step we do is enter a title. I'll use supervisor since I'm going to treat this list as a mini staff directory. So supervisor. Now it's a lookup list, so we're going to choose lookup from the types. The screen refreshes. You want to wait for that. You can put a description in if you choose to. I'll put something in like, please identify who this person reports to within the organization. That's a good enough description. That'll help it. If you want to require that this column contains information, you can choose yes. I tend not to choose this, and rather I like to enforce it through policy rather than technology. And there's different reasons you can think about it, but generally you want to be careful with requiring too many fields because it frustrates users. The next one is enforce unique values. In this particular case, because multiple staff members might have the same supervisor, we don't want to enforce unique values. Next, we want to tell SharePoint where to get the information from. In this case, since it's basically a staff directory list, I'm going to look up to the existing list that I'm in. I'm going to go ahead and click in the Get Information From drop-down menu. I'm going to click on that and choose Metadata Demo, which is the list we're using today. The screen's going to refresh again. And now I can choose which column I want to display when I'm looking it up, and you'll see what that looks like later in the form. But here you can choose from any of the fields that are in there. Of course, because I'm doing a supervisor, I want a name, and employee name is the perfect one. You can choose to allow multiple values if you'd like. In this particular case, we won't do it because a person only has one supervisor, so we won't use that. And the next option you have is the ability to sit there and choose if you want other columns to be visible. I'm going to come back and show you what that means later, just so I can give you a show and tell. We're going to add this to the default view so it's easy for us to see as we go forward. And as we come down, the conditional formatting is an advanced functionality that it's not part of this training, so we'll show you on a different one. And then the relationship, we are going to show you this, and we'll come back. This just talks about how do we manage that lookup data. But I'll show you that at the end. Let's go ahead and hit OK. Bottom right-hand corner is OK. I'll press that. And now coming back up to the logo, just to the right of the logo, you'll see the breadcrumbs. Let's click on Metadata Demo, and it takes us back to our list. We're going to add a supervisor for one of these employees. So I'm going to choose John Smith right here. I'm going to click on the ellipse. It opens a menu. And in the menu, I can choose Edit Item. So we're going to choose a supervisor, and down below here is where our field is. So let's go ahead and choose Chatty Cathy. She's always my favorite. There's our description, by the way. It's underneath the field. So as people are filling it out, they see the description, but that description is nowhere else. It's just a helpful tip. Let's go ahead and hit save. And when we save, we'll see that John Smith's supervisor is now Chatty Cathy. So first thing I want to do is show you some of the stuff I just bypassed pretty fast. I mean, that's a very fast, easy way to show what the lookup looks like. But one of the things we bypassed, and I'm going back to list settings, were those extra columns. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to come down to the column we created. That was supervisor. Click on that. And if you recall, as we were coming in here, there was this section where you could add columns to show additional information. So the employee name is what you see when you're choosing a lookup. But once you choose that person, you can choose to show additional information. In this case, I'm going to show favorite color. That seems like an easy one to do, and to demonstrate it, you can choose as many as you want. This is really helpful as you have more data that's real world data. I'll press OK. We're going to go back to our list by coming up here to the breadcrumbs again, clicking on that. And now you'll notice that they added an additional column that shows that Chatty Cathy's color is yellow. So I wanted to talk about the relationships we touched on earlier. I'll show you 3 examples of what happens. In our list, you can see that John Smith's supervisor is Chatty Cathy. Well, what happens if we delete Chatty Cathy here? She's removed from John Smith, obviously, as a supervisor, and that's the default value in a lookup list. You'll see it right here. I'm going to click on the ellipse, choose delete for Chatty Cathy. I'm going to confirm. And you'll notice the information is gone. So that's one thing that happens with the relationship of the data. If a person is deleted, or if anything that is lookup information is deleted and it's referenced somewhere else, basically SharePoint cleans it up. So that's the default. Let's go ahead and make some changes to the lookup column, though, to prevent this now. So let's go ahead and give this person another supervisor. Congratulations, it's now Bob Taylor. And so now you'll see that Bob Taylor is the supervisor, and it turns out his favorite color is green, not yellow. We're going to go to the list, go back to the list settings over on the right here, go down to our column, supervisor. The next thing I want to do, so our default was the data was cleaned out of John Smith when Chatty Cathy was deleted, but now I want to prevent that from happening. And so in here, I can enforce the relationship behavior by choosing restrict delete. And that means that they won't be able to delete the item. Let me just go ahead and show you. It's faster to show you than to tell you. I'll go back to the breadcrumbs to our list. You recall I deleted Chatty Cathy and Chatty Cathy went away. So now let's delete Bob Taylor. When you delete Bob Taylor, it'll prevent us from doing it. So it's doing a confirmation. But here it comes up and gives us an error. It says you can't delete it because it's still being used. I'm going to go ahead and go back. That's awesome. That's how we kind of want it sometimes. We don't want anybody to just be able to delete an item that's used somewhere else. So we don't want Bob Taylor to be deleted if Bob Taylor's here. What really needs to happen is somebody needs to come in and change that supervisor. We know Bob Taylor's leaving, so let's change it to Tom Cruise or somebody. So we'll change it to Tom Cruise. Now you'll notice John Smith's got Tom Cruise as the supervisor. We're going to go back to Bob Taylor this time. Delete Bob. And Bob's gone. That was no problem at all. So that's restricting. Let's go ahead and get back to the list settings. Come back over here. And the last one we want to show you is cascading. So I'm going to come back to supervisor. The cascading relationship. So the cascade delete here will sit there and delete everything related to the item we're deleting. Let me show you while I talk to you. Come back here to the list using the breadcrumbs. Okay, so Tom Cruise is listed as the supervisor of John Smith. Previously, we deleted Chatty Cathy, and Chatty Cathy was deleted from the supervisor field. Then we tried to delete Bob Taylor, but under restrict, it wouldn't let me do delete Bob Taylor because I had restrict delete on, because Bob Taylor was listed as John Smith's supervisor. Now Tom Cruise is here and we have cascade delete. That means that when we delete Tom Cruise, John Smith is going with him. That's a whole different scenario, right? So let's go ahead and delete. You'll notice on the screen, I want to make sure you're tracking this. We have Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is listed as the supervisor for John Smith. Let's delete Tom Cruise. So here it's giving you a warning that you're about to delete all sorts of related items as well. I'm going to hit OK. And we're left with just Jane Doe and Johnny Walker. That's called cascading deleting. So it's a pretty fancy thing. You have the default delete, you have restricted delete, and then you have cascade delete. I just wanted to briefly describe another example of how you might use lookup columns. You already saw how you could use it in a staff directory. In this same example, perhaps we could use it to create a lookup column to a document library that contains employee files. This would allow you to access those files from within the directory compared to going to the library, and it would build that relationship between them. Lookup columns enable you to quickly create relationships between various lists and libraries within your site, and are great simple no-code ways to begin to build business solutions using Microsoft 365 products. And that concludes this lesson. I hope you found this tip useful as you continue to use Microsoft 365 related products in support of your day-to-day job. Please provide me with feedback in the comments, including suggestions for tips you'd like to see. If you found this tip helpful, please share it with others in one of the social media platforms, or just go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I'm your host, Neil McDonald with SV MacPack. I thank you for joining me today and hope you'll join us again for other tips.